head coaching search. And where are we on the coaching search? What's the timeline? Who's in, who's out, and what can we expect going forward here? So, Steve, I want to start with you with Taylor Jenkins and Mike Brown. Did you hear anything on those interviews and how they went?
Look, I think everything is sort of a process. That's what I keep hearing, due
Yeah.
diligence, and I think we hear every one of these interviews goes well, and they should. Like Mike Brown is a qualified candidate. Taylor Jenkins did a good job in Memphis. These are guys who are well respected. Micah Nori got added to the list today. All good candidates. Are they all an upgrade from Tom Thibodeau? Are they a guy, a reason that you fire a guy who got you to the Eastern Conference Finals? I'm not sure it's a good sell, and I think that's part of the problem here for the Knicks is, when you make a move like this, I kind of wrote in a column I think a week ago, you can make a trade a star player. You want to be able to tell your fans, your base, that next day or that day, we're bringing back this guy. This is why we did it. This is what we have coming. To fire a guy who's done what Thibodeau did, you really have to have a good answer of this is what, we knew when we got rid of him, we had this coming in. And the feeling I've gotten all along from everyone I talked to is Jason Kidd was that guy. He was the one guy they considered an upgrade, a good fit for this team where they're at now. And just now that it's sort of, still in limbo, I think every day it ticks on, everyone gets a little bit more questions in their head, why did we do this? You start seeing Dick Vitale and other people start saying maybe the right thing is to call Thibodeau back. And obviously that's not happening. But you just feel like if you're going to make a move like that, you've got to have a good answer right away. And due diligence now, to me, is different than due diligence in 2020 when you were coming out of a disastrous period and just setting up your team. I just think it's a different situation.
Yeah, it is totally different. I would add to the Jason Kidd list that you mentioned, I would add Emmy Award. I think he was a guy who, maybe there was a wedge in there that they could have exploited. Obviously, that wasn't the case. And Chris Finch, too, with Minnesota. I would put him there with Kidd. And the Kidd thing is going to be interesting until it's not. He's going to be, in my mind, a candidate until he puts pen to paper and signs an extension with the Dallas Mavericks, because this is where it's sat for a while now. I don't think anybody, Steve, anybody who's covering this thing has closed the door on Jason Kidd. And then the reason for that is, we know the Knicks like him. I can't speak for Jason Kidd, but I know how he felt about his time playing in New York with the Knicks. And I would assume that, coaching here is an enticing proposition. So until the Mavs come out and say, we've extended Jason Kidd, he's not going anywhere. To me, he's a candidate, and I know he's a candidate. So that's where this thing turns. If Jason Kidd does do that, where do you go? Do you go Mike Brown? Do you go Taylor Jenkins? I mean, it's going to be interesting because this thing to me hinges on Dallas and how long can you wait there for the owners to react and put something together for Kidd.
Well, I think you're right. And to me, the interesting thing about the Kidd situation is, that's a good team there, and you're getting Cooper Flagg tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting situation, but everything I hear there is that things are sort of in disarray. And they're losing, they just lost his lead assistant. They let walk with never negotiating with him. And he's going to be associate head coach of San Antonio. I've heard rumors about Jared Dudley leaving, Shamgod possibly to Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these things I've heard, if you see his staff falling apart, you haven't negotiated. We saw right away Billy Donovan in Chicago, Ime Udoka. As soon as their names came up, they were getting extension talks with their teams. That hasn't happened with Jason Kidd, and I think he isn't sure what's happening, because when you look at it, it's just you're losing your assistants. There's some uncertainty, I think, on the roster. There's some uncertainty about what happened last season with Luka Doncic. It's a strange situation, strange ownership group. It's not like it was when Mark Cuban was sort of an open door guy. I think he's still alive in the mix. And look, as hard as this may be to imagine, the Knicks are the stable organization that he could probably point to as a better situation for him right now.
the thing that's fascinating to me there too, Steve, is they share the same agent. Excel Sports represents, I should say, Jason Kidd and Nico Harrison. Sorry, share the same agent, Excel Sports, and so that just is another wrinkle there to me that's kind of fascinating. And Houston came out through source reporting and said Emmy's not going anywhere. It's not happening. Chicago comes out and extends Billy Donovan, though I haven't seen that one come officially yet. And then Houston extends Udoka. The Mavs declined the Knicks' request to interview, but beyond that they have not come out even through the media and said nothing's happening here. Kid's not going anywhere. Here's our guy. So that also to me is a little bit curious, and it kind of leads me towards what you're saying in terms of maybe Kid not even being sure where things stand. And so that to me is kind of in a big picture sense where things are at. But now with Micah Nori, and then I assume they'll bring in some other assistants. What's your read there in terms of the likelihood that a guy like Micah could end up with a job?
Well, he's an interesting candidate because he did do some filling in, very well respected, been an assistant a long time. But to me, again, this is a situation. You're taking a team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals, has huge expectations, and so we can see sort of the East has opened up a little bit with injuries. You're going to be, the expectation is you win the East. That's what Thibodeau didn't do, and what sort of is on the hook for the next candidate. So to me, to give a guy who's never been a head coach other than filling in when Finch broke his leg, I have a hard time believing they're going to go that route. I think it's more due diligence. There were other guys who were offered. Sean Sweeney, who we mentioned, one of Dallas's top assistant, was offered an interview and turned it down and instead took that associate head coaching job. So I think that kind of probably gives you an indication that maybe he didn't feel confident that an assistant was getting this job.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that if their plan A and B has to be, and I think it is, getting a head coach with experience, somebody who's done it before. If you're turning to that assistant and it's going to be his first time on the sideline in that role, I think things have gone very poorly for your coaching search. And what about a resolution? Obviously, they're not going to get this thing done before the draft, which is tomorrow night. What do you think about a potential timeline, Steve?
I had heard from people that it wasn't going to be done before the draft, but that the ideal scenario was they wanted to have it in place before Summer League, and ideally before that free agency period, because that's going to be a vital thing for them too, to try and add to this roster. When it was Thibodeau, it was easy to say we're gonna try and sell some veteran for some minutes here. We're going to give you an opportunity, take a 1-year deal. We can give you a championship contending team, a good high profile spot for you. But when you don't know who the coach is, it's really hard to pick out who fits, when you don't know what the system is, when you don't know what you're going to be stepping into. And to me, if you don't have a coach in place July 1st, I'm not interested in talking to the Knicks if I'm, a 10-year guy in the league. And I'm certainly not taking less money, not knowing who the coach is going to be.
Right. It certainly complicates things on the free agency front. I think similar to you, I don't know if they look at free agency June 30th as a must date to have a coach in place by. The thing that is lingering out there too, and not to connect the two, but the Giannis Antetokounmpo thing, where Shams Charania mentioned yesterday that Giannis holds things close to the vest, and he's still kind of thinking about what he's going to do, and he wants to see what Milwaukee does in free agency. Do you wait that out? And if you're a head coach, a potential head coach, do you wait that out to see where he lands? Because obviously, trading for Giannis Antetokounmpo makes it a very different job than it would have been without that trade. So I just wonder how that factors into Giannis. I know he said to an overseas outlet that he wants to go back to the finals with the Bucks, but to me, we haven't seen a full pledge, a full renewing of the vows, so to speak, between Giannis and the Bucks yet. So that to me is interesting as you get closer to free agency. What's your read there, Steve?
I mean, I'm guessing here because the Knicks aren't saying, but to me, everyone in the league is interested in Giannis. But the Knicks have the advantage here, at least in this one scenario, that they're the only ones with a coaching vacancy. So it's not like a coach, like not like Taylor Jenkins is going to say, "I'm going to wait to see if he's interested in the Knicks. Yes, I'm going there. If he's interested in Miami, I'm going there." Whatever it was.
Right.
I think that the coach is not so much a situation. I think your other point, though, is valid, that the Knicks made big moves last summer, and probably kicked themselves a little bit now, wondering if maybe we held some of these assets, for a Giannis chase that would have been hard for anyone to anticipate, particularly when they got Lillard last summer, and you thought that this was an all-in effort by the Bucks. I understand why they made the moves they made last summer. I think they probably are kicking themselves a little and probably on hold here, and wanting whatever chips they can push in there, figuring out a way to do it. And I don't, you and I sit here and conjecture about things, but I've seen them do miracle work with the cap,
Yeah.
deals that I didn't think they could make. So I don't rule anything out. Do I think Giannis is coming to New York? I don't. But do I think everyone is, crossing their fingers and hoping there's a way that they could do it, like every other team in the league they are?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, all 29 teams, probably even throw Milwaukee in there at this point because of the uncertainty.
Yeah.
So all 30 teams
Right.
are at least keeping an eye on that situation. And obviously, for me, it only works if he demands to come to New York and Milwaukee then decides to send him to where he wants to go. Because outside of that scenario, the trade packages other teams could make obviously far surpass what the Knicks could offer.